Welcome back. Heavy rain, strong winds, it's a wild end to the week. Now they've blown out over the Tasman edges closer tomorrow. Notice effects are already here with a couple of fronts spinning out over the North Island tonight and tomorrow. The slow moving front responsible for today's rain over the South Island continues to get south. So it starts partly cloudy tonight out west with a narrow rain band affecting southern Westland and isolated showers in Nelson. Now tomorrow morning that rain spreads down over the top half of the island with heavy falls hitting the lower south in the afternoon and evening. It's wet with rain in the north, thunderstorms up the very top. Rain does spread south tonight, reaching Whanganui across the Bay of Plenty with strong nor'easters. Tomorrow the rain in the north eases in the morning, but it spreads over the rest of the island. Thunderstorms return again for the top half from the afternoon with strong winds. Downpours and thunderstorms tonight, but it eases to showers here in the morning. Some of those will be heavy, and the north to northeast wind will also be strong, sometimes gusty. Rain in the morning for all here with thunderstorms and downpours. It does ease in the morning with frequent showers in the afternoon, but the northeaster is strong and gusty at times. Periods of rain out east, easing to showers with fine breaks developing. Thunderstorms for Gisborne. Everyone has a nor'easter, which does ease tomorrow night. And periods of rain for the rest of the island, 2 to 2 at times, but it is clearing in the afternoon. The sun peeks through, but it's windy with strong east to northeast winds. To the South Island, occasional rain, but clearing in the west. Now, Nelson, you will have heavy rain at times with the nor'easter in the afternoon and easterlies everywhere else. Quite strong though for Greymouth and Pacifica. Cloudy and drizzly for Ashburton and Kemerton in the morning with rain to the north. It clears from late afternoon from Christchurch north, but rain develops in the south with light winds. Cloudy periods and drizzle. Rain develops late afternoon or evening for all here with light winds, turning to a southeaster from the afternoon to the deep south, and also tomorrow night for all people who need it. Rain also develops here tomorrow night, but during the day it's looking mainly cloudy and drizzly with a high of 12. Mostly cloudy for Christchurch with rain developing at late morning, clearing tomorrow night, light winds for most of the day, turning to an evening sou'wester. Periods of rain for Friday morning around the capital. It clears in the afternoon with fine breaks and a nor'easterly with a high of 16.
Sorry, and I'll just say for those that want the information, we'll record it, so others can come back to it later on.
Cool. Yeah, so this was just the update slide here, and I put the last month's slide there just to show the progression. So the activity I put up last month was what's the hold points, what's actually happening. So we're still with activity 1, we're having we are needing to understand conveyance. Part of that is understanding the basis of design for the treatment plant, how that's a predecessor. So the basis of design is being worked through quite rapidly and successfully. The upgrade, the anticipated time of deliverables will be the end of June. After that, the conveyance can be better finalised, and then costing happens thereafter. So we've got a couple of project coordinators on this one, and my colleague Peter Crabb is working really well with the engineers. So I'm confident that we'll have the basis of the design done by end of June. and work thereafter. So some updates to come. The second activity was just the in terms of a shortlisted option of the private land subsurface drip irrigation. It's still a case of our project team members from Waikato District Council, our growth infrastructure manager and property expert, working with the landowner just to get a memorandum of understanding underway. It's just that's not as far as an agreement for securement. It's just saying we're going to be working together. So that's quite a critical thing to work out, to nut out a little bit earlier, just to make sure everyone's working in the same direction. And I know that Hazel, the growth manager, works closely with our development community, and they're working on multiple projects. So that is just a case of things are going fine. It's just a bit of time, and that's so I'm just anticipating a time soon when we'll know how that one's going. Activity 3, best practical option determination. It's sort of I've put a little diagram there that I've brought up a couple of times through these sessions, and just sort of showing the RMA process. The best practical option is what we're working towards in terms of getting some timelines together for an application final solution to be lodged with the Waikato Regional Council. In terms of the activities to help progress that along, that's 1 and 2. When we're waiting on 1 and 2 to progress there, and then we'll have a better understanding of where we're going with the shortlist. So I've just put a little indication saying we're here. We're waiting on those 2 other aspects. So again, ultimately, it's just saying, when is it? A project can't go on for time without end. We have to get to some points, and I've just sort of done my best to address that in the last sort of box. Again, the feasibility for one of the shortlisted options, the private land. Without that, we don't have, we at the moment we've got a very, very short list of options. We need to really understand, is there or isn't there a private land solution on the table here? So I'm thinking that we'll better understand where we're at after the basis of the design, the conveyance, and also the MOU are underway. So that's a July estimate. I'm thinking that those should be received. Governance, we're going to have, again, as I highlighted in last month, this is all that the technical team is reporting up to decision makers who are the governance board, who work closely with our WEDC's CEO and councillors. So a board paper will be anticipated there, just to say this is where the project act, where to from here, and it would be, and some of those decisions or deliverables would help that, understanding costs and feasibility. Critical milestone, again, it is to get to best practical option determination through multi-criteria analysis. That's something that we'll be working, just when things heat up, we'll be really trying to be working a lot closer with the community at Hapu to make sure it's crystal clear, everyone's working together, and that's one of the objectives of this project, ensure that Hapu and community are along this journey. To do that, I'm really, I think we'll be better, we'll know this better July onwards. So next slide. Again, with the shortlist I talked about, I just wanted to bring in some older slides, just to there's newer people that are coming to this discussion, particularly Maunga Tāwhiri road residents. Really great group. I've been talking to many who just want to understand what is the history of this 2020 application process. And so this is just a quick recap, saying that, like, in March 2022, it seems like a lifetime ago, but at that point in time, we really were still working on private land optioneering, just to see if there was even an option for it. So with any land, public land discharge was always had progressed from the long list to the short list, and this is the conceptual level that had gone to the Wainui Reserve. The Wainui Reserve, as I'll show on the next slide, has been considered throughout different processes of consenting. This was this took a lot of the uses of Wainui Reserve and just really thought about how it could be a co-use example of reuse. It wouldn't be a fuller discharge solution itself. The green areas would be just a summer reuse option if it were to go ahead with fields. The yellow areas are the areas that would have an opportunity to really give a discharge solution with further investigation needed. I think it's very hard to see, but the one that's adjacent to the green area, that's a lower gully, that a naturalization of highly treated wastewater would be theoretically could go down there and then be collected, go to some irrigations and those lower sands throughout this. So we're saying if you're going to have contact land discharge, you can't be putting it onto those tight clay soils. It doesn't go anywhere. The sandy soils is where you're able to place it, or the younger loamy soils which are up in the Maungatauri Road area. This is what other councils have found useful. A useful area, putting it to those sandy soils. Again, I won't go into too much depth, but there was some advantages talked about at that point in March. It's already the land is already owned by council. That doesn't mean that it's a given you can actually use it, but it does make things a lot easier to navigate through. The elevation is lower, so it's 80 meters compared to about 180. So you've got that pumping pressure to consider. It's closer. Again, pros and cons. When we looked at it and we had really felt we'd exhausted a lot of the options for private land. It didn't look like we had many other options other than to land at public or a status quo option. Things changed a little bit, and we've really been putting the effort and energy for the last year working with the landowner at Maungatauri Road. But this option was paused for a while, and it still remains conceptual, but it exists as a shortlisted option. Next slide, Keith. And at that time, there was, as with this technical team, there is a need to keep reporting upward to the decision makers. So there was a paper put together on the public option. It was for information purposes, again, seeking feedback on co-utilisation and next steps for the most critical point was taking it to the committee and then just getting the views and of the community, explaining the project more, and another important aspect, of course, is with both hapu, which we did have that discussion. But when there became a bit of hope for a private solution to be part of the shortlist option mix, it was paused. So that was just a recap from me on that aspect. Can I have the next slide? Yeah, and just looking through, this is an image from that's on the project webpage. I put the link below from 1997, and I think it's just all these images haven't they still exist to this day, and I've just sort of circled the Wainui Reserve just to highlight that it was considered at that 1997. And in my mind, there's a couple of things to I think when the technology changes, it's actually in better shape to actually do to make a workable solution in the public land, just given the type of treatment. But some of the things that the risks were still exist as they do back then, and it was the risk of erosion and instability in the irrigation site. sea outfall is still needed, and that's the winter flows. But there is, again, the naturalization could be something that could be worked through with hapu. Other things, look, I guess it would have been eye-wateringly expensive back then. That's the same now, but again, with government regulation and people understanding that you have to invest in wastewater, these things, I think we're in better shape there. Spray irrigation, again, the advantage is now where there's more New Zealand examples of subsurface drip irrigation. It really is in terms of environmental effects, it's superior in terms of you don't get co-mixing with stormwater. When it rains, you still can actually apply subsurface drip, and also, I guess, with spray, there's other adverse effects like aerosols, etc. So we have moved on. Again, the main thing I'm excited about is the treatment upgrade. I think that is the most resilient outcome you could ever hope for Raglan. The 1997 we didn't. It would have been again, it landed on keeping the ponds with the just forgotten what they're called. Richard, what's the technology? The
the curtains and
no,
made me forget too.
What? We have rows and rows of them in the ponds.
Aeration.
Acromats.
Acromats and aerators. It was
yeah, that hasn't really lasted hasn't lasted the time frame, 15 years or 20 years. Again, with the membrane, again, it's resilient in terms of you can add additional capacity to it, and you're thinking more of a 50-year timeline there. So this is where I'd hand over to my manager, Richard, just to give an update on the treatment technology.
What we're doing at the plant is the process. The membrane bioreactor has a number of processes where the bugs and things are aerated and fed up and they break down. But the bit at the end is the membrane, and that's where the magic sort of is done, and is the big step forward. All those, and I didn't realise that Steve was actually getting me to talk on this, because I haven't got the actual how many microns it gets to. Have you got that, Steve, or not? But it takes out all the solids, and by the time it comes out of this, you've got crystal clear water at the end. Obviously, there are things like nitrogen, which and phosphorus, which we remove to the levels which will be designated in our consent by the regional council. Probably the people who are interested, we have one of these operating and we've got another one in TK, and we've got one operating in Mary. So we're more than welcome to visit the Mary site, which is operational, and you can see the quality of the effluent that comes out the end.
Richard, is that technology also being put in at the Pukikawi plant?
Yes, it's an MBR plant there too, but it's obviously a far larger scale. Whereas you look at Mary, it's a far smaller scale. It's for a population of 500 to 600. Whereas this one here, we're designing it, and it comes in trains. So we'll sort of pre-program it for the growth which we're anticipating in Raglan. So as time gets closer and we monitor the population, we will add another train in the future.
So it's sort of modular technology, is it? You add
absolutely. Yeah,
another module to it.
Another train at the end is what we do to as the flows increase.
Thanks.
Probably at one of our presentations, it would be good to get Peter along, and he can talk far more eloquently once we've. But at the moment, the phase we're at in Raglan is we're in that. It's going to be a design build contract, and we're building what we call a reference design, which is a sort of basic, giving them the outputs, what we want, and the volumes, and giving a basic layout. But the tenderers will go in and will, the contractors are the smartest at this. They will go in and do their tricks and give us the best combination that we think. The beauty of the one we're doing at Raglan is we're reutilising one of the ponds here. We've got quite deep ponds, which are suitable. Rather than building big concrete tanks for up the front end, we will partition those off. But in a future session, we'll go into that more. The next slide, 3 I&I. We've done this before, but just for people's reference, you can probably see this is from our hydraulic modelling. We generally flow gauge between 2 and 3 months when we do this model. We calibrate the hydraulics in the model, and then we develop a hydrology for this model, which is sort of imitating how water gets into the pipes from groundwater and from direct connections from people's down pipes and illegal connections and things like that. In my career, I've been involved in this quite a bit in the North Shore up in Auckland, where we had a big thing called Project Care, where we did a combination of reducing wet weather overflows in the North Shore coastline and bringing that down. Part of that led us to sort of understand when it's worth intervening, because we would do a mixture of passing the flows forward, building bigger pumps for your wet weather flows, storing it at certain pump stations, and one of the tools we used was inflow and infiltration. And we'd get that from our modelling. We'd identify which ones were leaking, and you can sort of see along the key along the side how we rated leakiness, because all networks do have wet weather influences. All wastewater networks that are gravity pipes, you're going to get groundwater leaking in no matter what. We try to minimise it. We have a CCTV program which we look at, but the levels, all of the levels that when we gauged Raglan were reasonably low. The highest one was around here, which feeds into the Wallace Street pump station up there, up at the top by the big, above the white blob where the big reserve is. And our crews have gone into that area and found some problems and rectified them in those areas. We'll probably look at it more when we finalise the modelling, but you can sort of see none of them are like we would find up in the North Shore. We'd have 10 or 15%. And what we mean when we say 10 or 15%, it's a simple thing of the rain that falls on that area, 10 or 15% would get into the pipes. That's what we call rainfall derived inflow and infiltration. That's why it's called RDII, if you're wondering. So really, inflow and infiltration isn't that high. We do monitor it annually. I think it's part of our consent requirements, Hugh, to annually say what sort of peaking factor we get in this network. And that's another way of measuring it. You get nice dry weather. You'll be chugging along out here, maybe doing 1,000, 1,200 cubes a day of treated wastewater at our plant. When you get wet weather, the peaking factors, when we average it over, and some of our networks can get as high as 6, and that's when we start getting slapped on the hand by the regional council and have to produce a plan of what we're going to do. But at the moment, we're doing pretty well in Raglan, but bear in mind we've had a couple of dry years. This year's been quite wet, so we are seeing bigger flows at the plant. So it's a thing we keep a handle on. And in our next LTP round, which is obviously the LT process is all we ask for things and the councillors decide how they're going to prioritise them. We have earmarked, first of all, Huntley for some I&I real effort to get the flows down, but Raglan's the second one we're recommending for a sum of money to try and just keep a handle on it because it creeps up over time.
Richard, there's a question that's come up from John around the difference between, was it FM2 Sorry, I haven't seen where's the question gone.
This is why
FM,
is
between FM4
so
and FM2, what yeah,
Oh,
one's
sorry,
lower.
didn't have the.
FM4 and FM2 that are beside each other. One's 3.73 and one's 1.05.
Yeah, and those separate catchments, we measure them. We would have put a flow gauge on those separate catchments, so that's why they're different. They just happen to be slightly different. One's lower and one's higher. They'll all be different. They won't be the same, John. Okay.
Also, Richard, what you're saying that these are low, which is really good. What is and you said sometimes up on the North Shore they were getting up to 15% or something. What's like an acceptable?
We in the shore we would tend to intervene when they were over 10%. Sometimes we'd go, if they're close to 10%, we'd go in, but that was our magic number. And that we did over 37 catchments, and each of our catchments would have been the size of Raglan. And we built a model so we'd actually, after we'd gone in, because we had a manager there would say, give the catchment a birthday. I always disagreed with him, but he'd line every pipe, and we'd do post gauging, so we'd actually know what we could achieve. So after that, we sort of built a model which sort of said, if you had a certain amount of pre-existing inflow, what did you get after you gave the catchment a birthday? So it gave us a predictive model of whether we were going to get enough flow reduction, and we'd put that into our solution model. You know, we'd chop this down. Did that mean we didn't have to upgrade that pump station and things like that, you know? So it was a balance of trying to lower flows or pass forward or store them at pump stations. So anyway, I've talked enough.
Yep, no, thanks.
Back to you, Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. That was good. And it's just there was an opportunity to go to Raglan. Matt led a quick session with councillors and community board members, and that was just a real query, was to better understand I&I, and we highlighted that we would bring it to this meeting and give a description. I think there was one more quick question from
John. Yep.
John. What is the proportion of the dry weather sewage flow? So that would be, I guess you're thinking, if it's I&I, we're talking generally, it's not, it'd be different. It won't be consistent annually. Dry weather, we wouldn't expect particularly much, but is that, how would you describe that, Richard?
Okay. All right, I'll just put the chat on just to make sure I understand what John was asking.
Okay.
Over a year, John, we can look at it annually, because you get fluctuations all the way through. Obviously, in the middle of summer, it's nearly all dry flow, but as an average, probably 60 to 65%, maybe up to 70% is dry flow as an annual volume. So only about 30% is actually wet weather induced. But what you've got to remember is that happens in those peak times, and that's when our network can struggle. You know, we've got to have the right capacity pumps to move those wet weather flows. We can't just move dry weather flows. And what we're planning at the plant, obviously, if you thought about it, the membranes can only take a certain hydraulic throughput. So then we have to, you know, design the plant for a certain amount of wet weather, but then we're going to be utilising the existing ponds at the plant to manage wet weather excesses of flows that we'll probably store them. Peter will be able to tell you exactly where. Some of the other smaller plants, we actually keep the ponds live and have a secondary sort of flow stream. It does give us a bit of resilience, but probably we'll use them for storage, I think, at this stage. But we'd have to get the designers along to get those details. Steve, it's something which I've asked Peter about, but I haven't really got the right answer at hand. Sorry.
Because I was asking the questions because I'm just wondering whether there's any possibility of doing a cheaper scheme by actually reducing the wet weather flows. And whether
that-
FM04 is in fact an example of that, or whether it's just different geology or newer pipes, or what the answer is in FM04 compared with FM02. And therefore whether we can actually cut down on that maximum flow that is probably the thing which puts the cost up.
Yeah, I mean, it does cause us problems, John, but it happens in every network. You know, you always get whatever influences. It's a matter of, like I was saying, that is quite low at the moment, and to try and lower it anymore, you spend a lot of money. So it's actually a money issue. What is the best way to achieve the result? Is it having a certain amount of storage and plus storing some of those wet weather flows in the ponds, which won't be utilized? You know, we won't need them as oxidation ponds anymore. So it's a balancing, and you could spend a lot of money going through there, and you might drop it by another % if you're lucky. You know, you might even not be able to measure it. So it's a balance of sort of renewing and keeping your assets in good condition so we don't get the leakiness, and building the correct capacity at the other end, because you are always going to get some wet weather influences. It's keeping it within acceptable tolerances. Back to you, Steve.
Yeah, it's great, Richard. I think you're right. Our colleague Peter will be excellent just to cover the treatment plant when we get further along with this aspect of the project. But so this slide, this is the last sort of thing I have to talk about. In the last month, it was really great. We were able to was able to talk with Peter Story, who's been really fantastic to work with. He's a resident on Maungatafu Road, and it was a case of him just getting up to speed with the project. He has Peter as an ex-community board member, and he was there very around the 2000s. So he understands the history in Raglan and the strong desire for an alternative to the point source discharge. So the part of the discussion was just understanding how to land actually works alongside natural processes, but equally it's how the region's groundwater actually works, because it has a big impact on effects. So out of this, we had a session with one of our team experts, and we are able to actually, it just became apparent that there was a step needed to do a desktop analysis and progress some work that had started earlier in terms of understanding groundwater and what it may mean. The image I've got two sets of details there. The first is just explaining what we're proposing to do, which is engage Mauricio, who's an associate in hydrology, to undertake a desktop study with known data and information from bores and geological makeup of the area, just to really explain, document what's happening there, why it's just would be project documentation that would accompany any land discharge opportunity that arises out of shortlisting and best practical option determination. It's a consenting initiative that'll be needed for the application. The scope preparation is underway now, and again, this is where definitely we'll bring it back to key stakeholders and just say, are the objectives right here? Does it feel right? This is what we're planning to do. So everyone has it's done in a way that provides the community with the information they need. So the image I have there was something that PDP prepared at the long list stage when the deep bore injection was a long listed option, and it was a case of really just looking at the geology there and putting some quite crude arrows on groundwater direction. The value of it is it's done by experts that actually understand it and can make these assumptions. So this will be something that Mauricio will be taking further and looking at some of those younger volcanic soils. So can I have the next slide, please, Keith? Okay, so with our discussion, Mauricio was able to take a slice and make a highly exaggerated picture. What do the numbers represent? I can answer that now, John, if you just turn your microphone and ask and tell me what you mean. Do you want to go to the next slide?
Well, on the previous slide, there were a whole
Okay.
series of numbers. I can
Oh,
see
okay, sorry.
the
Yeah,
colours are shown as to what they are, but I can't see any.
yeah.
Can you
It's
tell me
very,
what
very
the numbers
small.
are?
That's the bores, and they will be taken from the WRC database, I think.
So those are just reference numbers rather than any depth or flow or anything like that?
John, I'll have to look at it closer. I can't tell you. I was thinking that they're bores, but I can't imagine. I'm gonna have to look at it closer, John. I'll do that and get back to you tomorrow
Okay.
or next day.
Thank you.
Yeah.
there's
So
no-
then,
I was just going to say there's no glossary there showing what the symbols indicate of the various.
yeah, I can't imagine there'd be bores on up the mountain. So I think you're right. I think it's some sort of reference to height or something. But I'll just have to have a closer look at it and go back. And the document which I took it from, which is on our website. I will probably say make it clearer. But in any case, this is what Mauricio just brought to the discussion, and it's again quite a highly exaggerated transect, which he was able to prepare just to enable some good, clear discussion. So I've put the transect line there as yellow, and I've put a little man there at the top of that's Maungatawhiri Road, and put an equivalent man to where he'd be standing, just to really, he was able to, I guess the main thing there from Mauricio was just trying to illustrate that groundwater has its own characteristics done by geographical formation. It doesn't just go straight down and mingle with groundwater. It wouldn't have. There's lots of time that would actually, there's a timing thing that would happen there, but in any case, it has its own directional flow, which can be estimated or documented. So he's just sort of shown that there alongside a known sort of approximation of the groundwater depth taken from the WRC portal. There was, you can assume, you can make some assumptions about where it is. So again, with those higher, if the private land option becomes a real best practical option, the subsurface drip would be at the top of those higher areas, which would be on the top of the ridges and of about 20 hectare. And it's sort of, there wouldn't be, so there'd be like a good 70 meters from some of those upper areas between the groundwater level. In any case, it was just a discussion starter. So the next slide was something that Mauricio was able to highlight as well, which is I've just taken the little man in the transect there and shown the ridge lines and how the groundwater actually functions. And the key thing there is that it all sort of gravitates down these formations towards the ocean and the harbour. Again, that's sort of so anything to the east of Maungatawhiri Road, there would be no flow from groundwater heading there. It's heading towards the coast. And again, that's sort of, so it was great just to cover this with Peter, just saying, well, what would be the thing that would the community be wanting to better understand if this became more real? It's saying, well, what would be the effect on the harbour and the town's supply of water? Is it an unconfined aquifer? Is it a confined aquifer? We're able to, there's some assumptions that Mauricio was able to say that it was the function of it coming up like that would be a confined aquifer, but all this can be documented in a report. So I think it would be just I just sense that it would be something that would be useful for this project and something that would be a project artifact that would be looked at over the next decade or so, something that doesn't exist for Raglan at the moment. So that's exciting for me. And that was the sort of the end of the presentation. I just have one last slide, and it was just a closing and a roundup. From the technical team, I've been preparing a frequently asked question document. I had one earlier. This is just a refreshed one, and I'll get that circulated and on the website with these slides that come out. Karen or Priya will be able to do that. Can you indicate on the last slide where the private land site is, please? Yep. Is it possible to put the slides on? Yes, these slides will go up, John. So the subject site, all that area that has, I'd love to be able to grab your little finger, Keith, but I can't. I'm going to have to ask you to. Can you go back to that one, Keith? Keith. Yeah, that's the one. See, if you see the area that's there's an area to the left which has got vegetation on it, and that's some Agorsi private block. That's the cusp of the yes, they go up after this meeting, but I'll check in with you, John, after I've covered this. So you can see Mangatafu Road there. That's the ridge line where the road goes across. The private site is a large farm which has the growth nodes within it, and it excludes that gorse area. That's sort of the boundary of it, and it'll be in the middle there. That's quite a large area. The investigations, the walkovers we've done, is that there would be about 20 hectares of secluded pockets in there that could theoretically provide the most efficient private subsurface drip methodology. I don't know. Is that? I'm going to look at the chat.
Yeah, I think.
That looks really good, Steve.
Okay, Helen, does that help? Sort of explain. It's sort of right. I'm sort of right in the middle of there. I can check in with you, Helen, tomorrow. Okay, cool.
Yeah, Scott, yes.
Okay, cool. So hand over to you, Councillor. That's really what we talk about.
Thanks, Steve. Richard. Do we have any other questions? Can you take down the screen, please, Keith? Or if everybody's happy to, don't need to go back to refer to that. All right, now we can see everybody. Is there any other questions for the experts while they're in the room?
Because I'm not sure whether anyone's had time to read the one that I put up about whether it's possible to put the slides on the website before the meetings rather than after. Because it just seemed to me that we could then just send a link instead of a big email, and that anyone who's not on the mailing list could actually have a look and see whether it was something they were interested in and whether they wanted to join the meeting. So I was wondering whether you've thought about that and whether it might be possible, or whether you could investigate, please.
Yeah, thanks, John. That's really valuable feedback. I'll just have to get my A into G and get these prepared a good couple of days earlier. So I'll do that next time. I will make a commitment to get them up, say 3 days earlier, and get the email out. Does that sound right? Or do you think maybe even longer?
Well, I will give you I'll give you an overrider to that, Steve, because it will depend on the ability of our comms team to get it into the website that quickly.
Okay. So yeah, that's right.
So if you can do your best to get it early, we'll do our best to get it into the framework. So I guess it's on a best endeavours basis.
Yep.
Yep.
Is there any guidance as to what the comms team need? Maybe they could be asked what feed time they need, lead time?
It's really dependent on workload and priority, John. So they'll be asked, but sometimes they've got other issues that they need to deal with, and this what they would consider an administrative issue may lower down their list. But as I say, best endeavours, and we'll ask them to do what we can, what is possible.
Yep. So we will
Thank you.
definitely try our best, John, to get them out a day or two earlier anyway for a sort of preview. But as Keith said, sometimes our comm teams under a bit of a heavy load at times, and especially with some of the weather issues going around, they end up getting backed up with dealing with the immediate stuff. But yeah, we will endeavour to do our best with that. Chris, did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, no, I just think we're on the right path of research, but maybe just if you are able to compare any data as to the nitrogen infiltration of the subsurface irrigation versus the alternative, which is kind of cattle and farming, so that the neighbors could actually do a like for like comparison of what they're going to experience having subsurface irrigation of highly potable wastewater as opposed to intensive dairy or beef dry stock.
That could be a subsection. It could, again, I'll present the scope to the community and just say, does it feel right? And that sort of aspect could be something that could either be put into it or be an addendum to it, just so that it's sort of just giving a clear understanding.
So they can compare apples with apples,
Yeah. I think that's a good point, Chris. That sort of gives a bit of clarity or some pretty clear understanding of if it's farmed under normal circumstances, this is the result compared to subsurface irrigation. So yeah, a good point. I don't know how difficult that would be to get, but I'm pretty sure you'd be able to get that off a per hectare or something of fed farmers would have a nice list of these somewhere. No, thanks for that. Any other questions? Anybody or any comments?
Oh, just on behalf of the Regional Council, no, thank you for that. That's a good summary of where things are at. Yeah, appreciate the update. Thank you.
Yeah, and cheers, Hugh, for being involved with us and coming along on the journey. It's really appreciated that your interest is there right from the start and know where we're going and, so to speak, holding hands on the journey. So
thanks
very much. So thanks for the progress. Cheers, John. Yeah, and to you, Steve, Keith, Matthew, Richard, awesome work going forward, and I think this type of communication is well worth it. So as we get into start to get into like the nitty-gritty bits now, so we're heading in the right direction, and I hope that we'll have a similar sort of process with the Te Kaupara stuff going in the next few weeks. I think we've got a meeting coming up, so looking forward to that as well. So if everybody's happy with that, thanks all for coming along tonight, and I'll just finish with a closing karakia. So e te atua kia te tuki pai o mātou mahi e tēnei hui, kia te mai tō rangi māri e me o manakitanga. Amene.
Amen.
All right. Thanks, guys. Enjoy the rest of the week. Have a good weekend, and we'll see you all on screen. I'll see some of you before a month, but before the next meeting, but we'll see the rest of you in a month. Thanks a lot.
Thank
you.
Yes, bye-bye.